Hey, you're listening to the Smoke Meat Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Pittman. Smoke Meat's brought to you by Joe's Underground at the corner of 8th and Broad in Augusta, Georgia. Jeremy and the gang make you feel like family every time you go in there, from the first time to every time. Make sure you go on in, have a good drink, have a good snack, just enjoy the people, make some new friends. Remember, I goes to Joe's and so should you. It's at the corner of 8th and Broad in Augusta, Georgia, in the bottom of the Lamar Building. Today, my guest is Mickey Burns, host of the long-running show Profiles. It's a great show. He's interviewed so many people over the years and done such a great job. I learned a lot from him today on this. I actually got schooled during my own show, which was awesome. And Mickey's also written a great book called From the Projects to Profiles. It tells how he started out and how he came up. And it's an inspiration to everybody. Everybody should check it out. So without further ado, here's the great Mickey Burns on Smoked Meat. So how are you today, Mickey?
I'm doing great. It's a pleasure to be on your show. Fayetteville, know it well, and welcome to my home here in New York City.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I can see it right now in my head anyway.
Yeah. Well, it's an honor to be on your show.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to have you on here. You've been in the business for so long and done so much. And you came from pretty humble beginnings, from what I understand.
Well, that's true. I just finished my first book. It's called From the Projects to Profiles, and what the projects represents is the housing projects in New York City, and one would describe them as low to medium income residents residing there, and that's where I grew up. So right from a young age, it had its advantages also growing up there. A lot of life lessons to learn, but you realized early on that economically, almost everyone's goal was, how are we going to get out of here to the next level economically? And mine would be education. If I got an education, I'd be able to move on. And I used to say to my mother all the time, "Mom, what do you think about me going to college?" And she would always say, "That's wonderful, but you'll have to get a scholarship." Mm-hmm. Because they couldn't have, back in the 50s, nobody had any money. So that was it. That my driving force was to figure out a way to get a scholarship, and that would be my way out of the housing projects.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you've definitely made it, and I think that, those kind of beginnings make a lot stronger people, because, I grew up poor. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so I tend to agree with you. You have to be tough, and there were no silver spoons where I came from. No connections, no silver spoons. You needed to figure it out for yourself. And move on that way, but nobody was there to guide you. You had to kind of do it on your own.
Yeah, exactly. Like I say, I grew up poor, and my dad died when I was 10 years old, and we just had, me, my sister, and my mom, and we were poor. And I think today, that helped make me what I am. It made me want to work and want to do better. Not saying Mom did a bad job, because I think she did great with what she had.
Yes.
But
yes.
A lot of people today don't understand what it's like to be hungry.
Well, that's true. And of course, there's also a certain attitude that you develop as well.
Yeah.
A certain toughness, a certain self-confidence, whether it's real or fake, you develop it because you need to survive in that environment. So you do learn self-confidence along the way, or you pretty much perish. You're not going to achieve.
Yeah.
And there's a scene. Do you remember the scene in Saturday Night Fever, where at the very beginning, John Travolta is walking down the street, bopping with a paint can in his hand, mm-hmm. and he's got that confident strut. And I wrote in my book, where I come from, we all walk that way. Yeah. Whether you were confident or not, that's the way you walk. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it was.
That's it. Because you'll figure out quick, while you'll have people that'll help you along the way a lot of times.
Yep.
Only one that you can truly depend on is the one looking back at you in the mirror.
It's so true. So these were, I say it was rough growing up in the project. However, there were a lot of life lessons that stayed with you for a lifetime, as they did with me.
Yeah.
And I got my scholarship. I realized early on that my ticket out would be athletics, and I earned an athletic scholarship to a place called Missouri Valley College, and that was the beginning for me.
Mm-hmm.
That was the beginning of changing my life.
And that's awesome, because you put the work in, and you're still putting it in today.
Oh, well, I don't even, at this stage, I don't even consider it work. It's a labor of love.
Mm-hmm.
I love what I do. I love the challenge of it. I love the experience of it. And to be able to sit down with these accomplished icons in the entertainment world is an honor. And I learned something pretty much from each and every one of them.
Yeah, I've been interviewing for not nearly as long as you have. Haven't done nearly as many, and I'm learning something from each one, because each one is different.
Well, that is so true, so true. I can give you one example. He's since passed, but actor Eli Wallach.
Oh.
He was in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and 100 other movies.
Yeah.
And I had him on the show when he was 95. And he was still sharp as a tack. And after the interview, he said, "Mickey, take a walk with me." And here we are. I'm walking up Broadway with Eli Wallach. That's a good day.
Yeah.
That's a good day. And he was carrying like a supermarket plastic bag. And I said, "Mr. Wallach, what's in the bag?" He said, "A pair of shoes that we're going to the cobbler to get them fixed. And that's where we're going." So I was kidding with him. I said, "Why don't you just go, with all your money, why don't you just go to Macy's and get 10 new pair?" And he grabbed me by the wrist, and he stopped me in mid-stride and looked me straight in the eye, and he said, "Mickey, I grew up during the Depression." And he said, "Back then, we didn't buy new, we fixed old, and I've never been able to shake that."
Mm.
What a life lesson.
That is definitely one.
And here he is, 95 years old. He's got more money than he needed, but he still couldn't break that feeling of insecurity that he may not have enough to survive the Depression.
Mm-hmm.
And he couldn't afford himself that indulgence to go out and buy a new pair of shoes when he could fix the old ones. Amazing story.
Yeah, that is awesome. That's somebody, once again, who has been hungry and remembers where they came from.
Well, pretty much like us. We've experienced the hunger early on. Kids today don't experience that as much as back in the day, I'll tell you that.
You ain't kidding. And, it's funny, just whenever I start thinking, okay, you're getting the hang of this interview thing, because when I first started, I would if this was my first interview, I would be using my radio voice, and so Mr. Burns, tell me a little bit about yourself. And that's canned. That's artificial to me. So I just like to talk. And it's funny, when I think I've got the hang of that, I have somebody that just throws me such a curve. I did an interview with Fred Schneider from the B-52s not long ago. And
what a nice man he is.
He is so nice. I had a great time with him, but I had like 3 pages of notes, and all of them were from, me listening to them as they were coming up,
Yep.
And I started hitting on those, and he just stopped me and said, "That's 40 years worth of history. People can read about that. Let's talk about something else." And I'm like, "Oh, crap."
Yeah.
But we had a good interview.
Yes. Yeah. And as an interviewer, and I write about this in my book too,
Mm-hmm.
If people want to get into the business and they want to be a host or a radio host or a TV host, I think the best piece of advice that I can give anyone is be the best version of yourself.
Yeah.
And be unique. Don't try to be somebody else or don't copy somebody that's doing it already, because we already have them. We need somebody that's new and unique, and we want to see the best version of that person.
Yeah, exactly. And the way we're talking right now, we could be sitting on the tailboard of my ambulance right now having a cup of coffee. And
Well,
that's
I think
what I like.
That's the key. I think that's the key to success. And when you get the tough interviews, my mentor, who was an anchor at Fox News named Bill McCreary, he always used to say to me, if you ever get into those interviews that are tough, and I've had a few, he said the key is never let them see you sweat. And he used to tell me that all the time. Never let, and that's also a skill set.
Yeah.
To be able to deal with tough questions occasionally, and move on with grace and dignity within the interview.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's I've got two things in my past that have helped me with that some. Is one, I'm a paramedic. I can deal good under pressure. And also I'm a stand-up comedian, and once you lose a room or you do something that doesn't get a laugh, you got to work to get that back, and you just kind of roll with it and just flow away from it.
Well, that certainly sounds like a skill set.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can't imagine being up on stage and going down for the third time and it's just not working that night. That must be really horrifying.
Oh, it is terrible. And anybody that says they get on stage and have never bombed is lying. They are lying to you if they say they've never bombed.
It must be so terrifying to be up there when you're bombing.
Oh man, it's just there's not even a description for it. But whenever you're able to pull out of it at that last second, it's so great. Yeah, it's
maybe someday you'll get to work in New York and we can all come and watch you here on stage.
Oh, that would be so great. We had talked earlier about the show that I'm wanting to come up and see. I may try and take some extra time and try and find a club or two up there that I can go to and get a little bit of stage time. I think that would be just great. Yeah,
we've got a few clubs here that I'm sure will be operating in full steam by then, hopefully.
Yeah, I hope so.
The pandemic certainly has slowed us down a little bit.
Yeah, I miss being on stage so bad.
Sure. Yeah, I know. Once it's in your blood, that's it.
Yeah.
You got the bug, and that's it.
That's it. I love making people smile. I've been doing it for right at 30 years now, and
oh my goodness.
Yeah, I've never done it really, really seriously, and I think that's what's kept me going. I've never been the comic who every show is a career breaker, and I just have fun with it.
Well, maybe now it's time to get serious.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, years ago, I used to go, Rodney Dangerfield used to have his club in New York. So he still has it, but he's since passed, many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But he was another one, he started late. I don't think he really started he was selling aluminum siding. And he was doing comedy on the side very lightly. Mm-hmm. And he didn't really get into it full time until he was in his late 40s.
Well, that's about my age. I'm 48 right now.
Yeah, so it's never too. Then what a career he had in his 50s and 60s.
Oh man, he did. He was so great, and he helped so many people, get their start. That it snowballed.
Right, but the only reason I mentioned it was that he got a very late start, and I guess the lesson there is it's never too late.
Yeah.
One of my guests said that to me during the interview. His name was George Foreman, heavyweight boxing champ.
Mm-hmm.
Said, Mickey, it's never too late to start or to start over.
Mm-hmm.
And he was also, George Foreman was also a good businessman.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean,
he's spokesperson for Midas Mufflers and George Foreman Grill. And one thing he said to me that stayed with me after the interview, he said, Mickey, a good business deal is not a good one unless both parties are happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I never thought about it that way, but he's absolutely right.
Yeah.
In a lot of times in business, one party feels like they have to always have the upper hand on the other party. And George said that's not the way it should be. It should be equal, and then that both parties should walk away feeling good and happy about the deal. It was a good lesson.
It is, because if you do a deal and you feel like, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to make a little money right now, but
Yep.
they're trying to make a mint off of me, and we're going to do this, but I'm probably not going to work with them again. But
That's right.
I've done things where I may not get exactly what I want, but I'm still happy with what I've got, and the other person feels like they are too, and it's been a really good relationship since then.
Yes.
And that's
so you understand you can appreciate what he was saying. And he and never too late to start or start it over. He was retired from boxing, and he was in his 40s and really started his whole boxing career over again.
Yeah.
And then he ended up winning the heavyweight championship a second time when he's like 50 years old.
Yeah.
And he said that, the key for him was when he made his comeback and when he decided to start over, he wasn't afraid to start at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he did. He took fights. He said that, he really had second thoughts because he knew he was far superior to the people he was fighting. But he also realized that, in order to do this, it's important that, you work your way back up the ladder. And he did.
Mm-hmm.
So when you are starting over again, don't be afraid to start at the bottom and work your way up.
Yeah, because I know anybody
the lesson.
Anybody that just starts at the top, that's not a really good foundation built on. And you can fall off of it really easy.
Yeah, I find that a lot today. Yeah. I find, the younger generation, they want instant gratification. They don't want to work their way up. They want to, they want to be at the top immediately.
Yeah.
Or they want to do what they want to do immediately. I remember when I started at Fox Television, I didn't start out as a host or a reporter. I started out as a sound man.
Mm-hmm.
And then I worked my way up to what I really wanted to do. The kids today, they don't want to, they don't have the patience.
Mm-hmm.
They want it yesterday, and it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
It takes hard work, patience, and determination, and that journey sometimes takes time.
Yeah, I remember I actually watched the old movie The Jerk the other night, and that just now brought a scene with Jackie Mason in it to me, where Steve Martin's in the bathroom and Jackie Mason knocks on the door and says, "Hey, you want to be president of Texaco Oil?" And Steve Martin says, "Sure, what do I got to do?" He says, "Clean the sink." He said, "So then I'll be president." He's like, "What, you don't believe in starting from the bottom and working your way up? What is it with kids today?" I love that.
Yep. Yeah, that's great.
And that's probably the worst Jackie Mason I've ever done. But
well, no, you're pretty good. It's funny because I was on vacation. I met Jackie Mason one time in my life,
mm-hmm.
and it was an awkward meeting because I was in South Beach, Florida, on vacation,
mm-hmm.
and I was just walking up Collins Avenue, and I spotted him on the corner, and he was talking to a couple of people, and within 10 minutes, there was like 20 people, and he was putting on his act to the 20 people on the corner on Collins Avenue. It was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. But he was so fabulous. He had everybody's attention, and he put on a show on the corner, right on the corner of the street. And that's the only time I ever met him.
Oh, man. He was so awesome. I loved him.
Tremendous.
He was just that guy.
He was. He's the best.
Yeah. Now, I'm not going to... Oh, go ahead.
Matter of fact, tomorrow night on my show, I have Marilyn Michaels. She was an impressionist,
mm-hmm.
and boy, she was phenomenal. She did a show. She was on a show on ABC back in the late '70s, Copycats,
mm-hmm.
and her and Rich Little. But that impression, that's another skill set that always amazes me.
Mm-hmm.
That people, because boy, they're so good at it, and I think you're kind of born with that, you know.
Yeah, I can do just about any voice. That's one thing I can do really well.
Well, it's a gift.
And
It's a gift. When I was one thing that I've been working on, talk about voice, being that I'm a TV host in New York City, is the New York. You know, we're in New York, but the people who run the stations, they don't want a New York accent. Well, even though you're here, right?
yeah.
So when I went to college in Missouri, I was studying communications, and my professor said to me, "You have a thick New York accent." And I didn't know what he was talking about, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I said, what is that? Because everyone talked like that where I came from.
Yeah.
So he said, you got to pronounce, you don't pronounce your ERs or your THs. So instead of saying power, you say power,
Yeah.
right? Tower. Instead of saying that, you say that, D-A-T, instead of T-H-A-T.
Yeah.
So I've been working on that, believe me, for 30 years to pronounce my THs and my ERs. And so when we talk about voice, it's something that I've been conscious with here in New York as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, I joked a while ago about my radio voice. You know, I used to do radio,
Yes.
and when I was really young, and that's one thing. When my first station I went to was a little bitty station down in McRae, Georgia. We called it $1 a holler, because that was what a 30-second ad cost $1. And,
Oh, that was it?
yeah, that was it. We did a lot of advertising. And this
Wow.
was just my voice on there, because I didn't, you know, it was just me. And then I got hired
Yeah.
at a major market station in Augusta, you know, and they sat me down. The program director said, "Okay, I like your style, I like you, but we need to do something with your voice. You know, you try and do your radio voice." So
Right.
for a long time on that station, of course, this is Big Country 107, you know, and I used that little dynamic 80s 90s radio voice, and it was interesting, but it's not me.
Well, $1.30, was it $1 a minute?
I think a minute spot was $1.50.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh yeah, we did a lot of commercials. A lot.
I'm sure you did. There isn't anyone that can't afford that kind of spot.
Yeah, and we would produce them all on an old reel 8-track and have to put them
Oh,
on little
sure.
cartridges. Oh man, but I love producing commercials. That was so much fun, because I would do the ones that would get stuck in your head and you would remember them, just some little catchphrase or something.
Yep,
And
yep.
they were so much fun.
Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah. Well, I won't ask you the question I'm sure you're asked every time somebody interviews you, which would be something like, "So, who is your favorite interview?" Because I know
Yeah, that's a tough.
out of all of those, you cannot pick a favorite.
Probably not.
You know, there's no way.
When I think about it, there's something special about interviews that, if I take away something that's special, that becomes a favorite interview,
Yeah.
And I've had so many of them. I mentioned Mr. Wallach before to you.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a time, Joe Montana, the football quarterback,
Yeah.
I had him on the show. The only way we were able to get him, he was at a memorabilia convention after he retired in New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
So they asked us to set up in his hotel suite, which we did for the interview.
Yeah.
And as we were setting up, they had a nice spread for us of, cold cuts and salads. And I said, man, class act, that's really nice of them. And we were all set. Joe came in about 5:30. And as soon as they walked in, I saw his manager calling me over, he wanted to talk to me. And then I came over to him and I said, yeah, well, what's up? And he said, and he was looking over where the food is. He said, who ate Joe's dinner? And I said, well, humma, my best Jackie Gleason. I said, I thought that was for us. He said, no, that's Joe's dinner. I said, well, I'm so sorry because I feel like a kid with his hand caught in a cookie jar. I said, but we thought it was for us, and I apologize. So I started my interview with the great quarterback Joe Montana, by saying, Joe, I want to apologize for eating your dinner. You know, we thought it was for us. And he laughed, and he said, Mickey, I'll tell you, I would never eat that garbage. He said, after this interview, I'm going out to a nice Italian restaurant. Mm-hmm. And when he said that, he let us off the hook. You know, but the lesson there is never assume anything.
That is beautiful.
But I'll never forget that. You know, That was great. And I remember one time we talked about Rodney Dangerfield before. Mm-hmm. I had his co-star in Back to School, Sally Kellerman, mm-hmm. who also played in MASH.
Yep, Hot Lips.
I don't know if Hot Lips. You remember her, right?
I do. Will.
So in the middle of the interview, and I didn't ask the question, she just offered it, but I'll never forget it. And she said to me, Harrison Ford used to work for me before he became a star. And I said, oh, really, Sally? Well, what did he do? He was a carpenter. He was a moonlighting carpenter. Mm-hmm. So I said, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, and she said, he was building me a day bed hutch in my den. And one day he came in and he said, Sally, I just auditioned for this movie, and I think I got a shot of getting it. It's some Star Wars movie. Mm-hmm. And Sally said, when he said that, I thought to myself, yeah, right, it's probably some bad B movie. And I said, oh, that's interesting. And then, she was very pensive. And, she said, boy, was I wrong. And then she stopped for a second and she said, it's a good thing he made it in the movies because he was a terrible carpenter. He said, the day bed hutch that he built for me was a foot too short. How's that for some inside stuff?
That is beautiful.
Yeah, and I remember that, and that just stayed with me, and it had nothing to do with the interview on my end. She just offered this information, and that was it. And I can tell you one other story real quick.
Okay.
As one of my favorite interviews. There was a singer, I don't know if you're familiar with him, Dion DiMucci, and he was part of Dion and the Belmonts back in the 60s.
Yeah.
And he did songs like Run Around Sue and The Wanderer. They still play it at the time. Mm-hmm. So I had him on the show, and it was actually his 60th birthday that night. And in my research, I learned that he was part of a high school caravan of stars that were going throughout the Midwest that included himself, Richie Valens, who was the other one? And Richie Valens was and Buddy Holly. And the Big Bopper, right? Mm-hmm. And they were going on a school bus throughout the Midwest playing concerts, mostly for high schools and stuff like that. Because they were like teen idols at that time. So it was in February, and they were in Iowa, and they really were going around in a school bus. Mm-hmm. And the heater broke. So Dion said that Richie Valens approached him and said, listen, we're going to rent a plane to get to the next venue because everyone's getting sick, and we're tired of freezing on the bus. So they asked Dion, we have one seat left. Would you like to join us? Mm-hmm. And Dion said to Richie Valens, how much? And Richie said, $36. Dion thought for a second, and then he said, Richie, I pass. And Richie said, why would you pass? You want to freeze on the bus? And he said, well, $36 is the exact amount my mother is paying for rent in the Bronx. and if I took this flight, she'd never forgive me for the indulgence. The plane took off without Dion and crashed about 15 minutes into the flight.
Mm-hmm.
And that was pretty much, today they talk about it as the day the music died, when Richie Valens and Buddy Holly and the Big Bopper died in that plane crash.
Mm-hmm.
And Dion said to me during the interview, he said, Mickey, if it was $34 or even $40, I probably would have taken the flight.
Mm-hmm.
But because it was $36, the amount of my mother's rent, I passed.
Man.
And that story will always stayed with me.
Mm.
That's a great story, isn't it?
That's an amazing story.
And now he's probably 75 years old, lives in Florida, and he still performs and records. You know, he's had a great life.
Yeah, I tell you, that strikes me. That just that number, because it's funny how things like that hit. Just
you just never know.
Yeah, think, okay, that's how much my mom pays for rent. She'll kill me if I do this. And,
well, I guess his mother played a major role in him not getting on that plane.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely. Yes.
Oh man.
Yes.
Well, Mickey,
I know that. And I write a lot of. I put a lot of these stories, my favorite ones, in my book, which is From the Projects to Profiles, a memoir.
Mm-hmm.
And you could get it on BarnesandNoble.com, Amazon.com. It's easy to get.
Mm-hmm. Outstanding. Well, Mickey, I tell you, I've had a ball, man. I could listen to these stories all day, and I'm getting the book. That's all there is to it, because I'm looking for something new to read, and I think I just found it.
Well, I hope you like it, because I put a lot of the stories over the years in the book.
Yeah.
I can tell you one other thing that I learned, and it's a quick story.
Okay.
Do you remember Christopher Plummer, the actor?
I do.
Yeah, he's a famous actor.
Yeah.
So the week before, I had him on when he was releasing his autobiography. The week before the interview, my assistant gave me a package and said, there's a link to a radio interview at the top, and I think you should listen to it. So I did. I listened to a radio interview. It was from a small radio station in Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
And the interview went like, hello, Christopher Plummer, welcome to our show, WKRP in Cincinnati. Pleasure having you on the show. Mm-hmm. Pleasure being here, Christopher said. Now the interviewer asked Christopher Plummer about 3 questions that had nothing to do with his book.
Mm-hmm.
So Christopher stops him now by the 4th question, stops him in mid-sentence and says, excuse me, son, did you read my book? And the interviewer, in his best Jackie Gleason, humana, says, no, but I've been meaning to, and I'll get to it. And with that, all you hear is a click. He hung up on the guy.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
So I said, oh, my goodness, I got a lot of reading to do because I had the interview in a couple of days. And I said, well, you know what? He's right in many respects to do that because it's disrespectful.
Mm-hmm.
To have somebody on your show and you're totally unprepared for that interview.
Mm-hmm.
And the lesson that I learned from that is, not only be prepared, but be over-prepared and always have the respect. If somebody has a book, read it. If they have a new CD, listen to it. That's just a sign of respect. And if you do so, and you do that, the person that you're interviewing will appreciate the fact that you've extended yourself and given that time, and you'll get a better interview.
Mm-hmm.
And I see it time and time again.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many people have said to me, and these are major stars, have said to me, Mickey, I appreciate the fact that you're so prepared. I mean, Carol Channing couldn't get over it. She said, Mickey, you I've been in show business for 60 years, and you're asking me questions that nobody had dug deep enough to come up with. She said, I'm really impressed. She said, last week I was on a TV show, and the host said to me, well, Carol, tell me, what is it you do? They didn't even know she was one of the biggest Broadway stars of all time.
Oh, go.
You know,
man.
so I mean, how do you become a good interviewer? How do you become a good host? You know, and it's the same thing. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get to be a good interviewer? Preparation, preparation, preparation. It's the same, it's the same format.
Mm-hmm.
If you put the work in, you'll be good. So with Christopher Plummer, I started his interview off by saying, all right, Christopher, is it okay if I read a couple of passages from your book? He loved that. He loved that. He was smiling, and he was all in at that point.
Mm-hmm. Outstanding, yeah. I know I've had a ball doing this, and I never thought about that before, and it seems strange that I hadn't. But
what's that?
About
the preparation thing?
Yeah, because I've got so many things going on, and like I say, it's kind of a point of respect, to be prepared, which I try hard to be prepared, but
right.
Whenever I do have somebody that's had a book or whatever, if I haven't had a chance to read it, I always do though, because
well,
yeah.
There's another way to it. I learned the hard way.
Yeah.
I was at one point before doing profiles, I was working for Time Warner, and I was hosting a show called Staten Island Live, and it was like Larry King Live, that kind of show.
Mm-hmm.
But it was live television.
Yep.
And I had this detective on once, and I was asking him, because he was doing a lot of good things with young people in the community.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, I had like a 20-minute segment to close the show with him.
Mm-hmm.
But every answer he had on my question was yes or no. It was yeah, yes, no, no, yes. So now I got like 7 minutes left. I'm out of questions on live television.
Oh.
Talk about going down for the third time. Oh, my goodness. So I said, somehow we got through it, but it must have been horrifying. It was horrifying for me, and it must have been horrifying for Watch, me trying to squirm my way out of that last 7 minutes. But I said to myself, from that point forth, I said, I'll never get caught short again like that.
Yeah.
If I have a 10-minute interview, I have 20 minutes worth of questions.
Nice. That's some really good advice.
That you can be terrified, especially on live television. That was horrifying.
Oh yeah, stand up is nothing compared to that. I couldn't imagine doing live television. Oh man.
It never dawned on me that I would have that issue. I thought I had more than enough questions, but he just kept answering with short answers. He didn't elaborate on any of the questions, and I ended up 7 minutes short.
Oh man.
Yep. So that only happened to me once.
Mm-hmm. Hey, that's all it took. Well, Mickey, I appreciate you coming on here, and you are welcome back on here anytime.
Oh, I would love to come back. It's a plan. I'll see you when you come to New York in November. We'll meet. And I also look for you keep at it, because I want to come see you on stage at a comedy club somewhere in New York in the near future.
Outstanding. Well, like I say, we're gonna hopefully get up there in November, because I really want to come up for the show, and I really want to come up and meet a lot of the people that I'm getting the privilege and chance to interview, and I'm just looking forward to it. Mickey, thank you so much for the last 20 years doing this.
Well, it was my pleasure. You have a great weekend and a great evening, and thank you so much for having me on your show, and God bless.
God bless you.